Ultimate Spider-Man. It's a game. It's a game that I played when I was smaller, and I've had a lot of history because when my mom was around, she bought me an Xbox. When I was younger, she didn't let me play Halo because she thought it was just too violent. Instead, she bought me Republic Commando and Ultimate Spider-Man. I know, great choices. So I played this game a couple of times when I was a kid and finished it a couple of times. And that leads me to wanting to just retroactively review it, not only because of that, but also the Ultimate Universe being reintroduced by Hickman. This universe is weird, and it has a lot of wacky things and just horrible misrepresentations of characters, like Black Widow and Stark having a sex tape, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver having an incestuous relationship, the whole version of just the Hulk, the character assassination of Deadpool to the point where I wonder if Ryan Reynolds will sue if he ever sees that one in movie. But it also brought us Black Nick Fury, Miles Morales, and like the whole backbone of the MCU. So I think it's a good thing to talk about right now. So let me get about how to run this. Running this game wasn't hard. At first I tried emulating it, which has its own problems and just microchasms of things I just don't understand. So with a little research, I found out there's a pre-installed little file because it's an abandonware game. The file itself comes with a widescreen support, but you'll notice that the textures haven't been upscaled at all. I downloaded an HD mod pack from Gustav F from Vortex, and it really does make the game look like it's modern. I guess it's a good point to talk about the visuals. The game looks really good for its age. I think a lot of it comes from the fact that they're using stylized graphics for like the suits and the character models. It definitely does look its age, but for the time, I can see why a lot of people remember this game because of that. It looks just like the comic books. It looks just like David LaFuente just fucking drew this, just like he did Ultimate Spider-Man. But there are times where things just look off. Low quality, or maybe like just not enough detail, and I think it just stands out a lot because a lot of the times with like, for example, Spider-Man's high school, it looks really good, and having Spider-Man stand in front of it looks awesome, but having like the NPCs and the cars and everything around it, it just does look a little cheaper after a while. I can see probably this being used either for like some sort of resource management or maybe even something else. The other part is the animations, which look okay. There's times where the character models make awkward faces and the lip syncs don't just kind of sync up at all. But for like the random animations for like Spider-Man's punches and for Venom's just like attacks, they all look pretty good. I'd say this game overall just aged pretty decently just because of the cell shading. Everything else, the map, the NPCs and the cars have not, and it does look like an early aughts game from time to time. But you will grab a screenshot once in a while and you can probably convince someone this is like some sort of mod for the Amazing Spider-Man. So with all that said, let me get into the gameplay. Or at least let's start looking at the story as well. We start with our introduction with Peter getting his powers, him and Eddie finding the symbiote, and just like what the symbiote is in general. And I'll just say that this version of the symbiote is just way better than the normal one. I think, at least. I believe having the symbiote be some sort of familial tie to both Eddie and Peter, and being something made of science based on Peter's DNAs, or at least Parker's DNA, not Peter's, but his dad's, it's a lot more interesting and brings a lot more to the table sometimes than Alien having to explain how his alien origin makes him an anti-hero. We continue with the plot, with Peter finding more about the Venom suit and wearing it and getting it over it, and we get to our tutorial. And right here, I just wanted to say that I think it's really dumb that the tutorial starts after Peter loses the suit. Why? The tutorial is uninteresting. It's just, I understand that you're going through it, but this is also compounded by the fact that the tutorial is super fucking long, It's like 3 missions long, and we go through like 3 loading screens when it could have just been one giant area with all of the things to teach you in a sandbox with the black suit on. A perfect time to teach combat, a perfect time to teach web slinging. It just boggles my mind because you just lost the more interesting part to just have Venom introduced like this as a sort of boss fight. This introduces us to our combat. God, the combat. The combat is just so bad. I can see this being back then being decent, but just with all the modern stuff I've played nowadays, it's just so weird to feel a game this floaty. The punches and the kicks all rely on this lock-on system that just does not work from time to time. This lock-on system also just breaks down a lot of the time when bigger enemies are introduced. So now you're trying to fight the controls to get Peter to kick and punch instead of the air, the thing you're trying to lock on to. Along with, there's no dodge button. It's just the same as your jump button. It becomes really, really hard to fucking dodge when you're jumping 2 stories and then having to jump back in because you're pushing a button to attack, and now it becomes like Dark Souls. I have to fucking wonder what button push does what and time it, but not in a good Dark Souls-y way where like it feels like skill. This just feels like the game is just breaking and is just too slow or unresponsive. We follow Venom through the tutorial and end up being chased by the police with Peter disappearing. This leads to Peter going to school and us learning the second part of the tutorial, the movement. The movement's not actually that bad, actually, and it's probably my favorite part of this whole game. It is the most movement you get out of you want movement in a Spider-Man game. He's essentially a rogue. He's jumping from building to building. He's sticking to walls. He's swinging from vines. He's really doing it, and it's probably the best part of the game, honestly. I mean, these are the people who made Spider-Man 2 after all, and I can only imagine that they're using the same physics engine they're using here. But the only problem I have with it is that, again, the controls just feel so floaty that you just kind of wonder if, like, you're gonna even make the next swing sometimes, or if the webs themselves have to connect to things. You actually have to have buildings in your vicinity to do certain moves. So like web zipping, web slinging. If you don't have low buildings to do these things from, you actually can't do that movement, which is interesting and cool, but I can see why the Amazing Spider-Man did without something like that, because it does limit like a lot of what makes this game fun. You get your web swingers and you learn about web zipping. Web zipping is a good mechanic because you're having to learn this really fast movement. The problem with it is that it can break, and you end up using it more than web slinging a lot of the time for like the races and stuff, which I'll get into in a moment. We learn our web slinging, our web zipping, and stuff like that as we end up trying to go to the warehouse where Peter and Spider-Man are set up. This leads us to the next part of my problem with the combat, the web part. See, in other web Spider-Man games, the web combat's always kind of weird. It's either a hit or miss, and a lot of the most modern games, including Amazing Spider-Man, have started working it into the combat, realizing that Spider-Man does use his webs in his combat. This game doesn't do that. Maybe it's the age, I don't know, maybe I'm being too hard on it, I probably am, but having to web every enemy after punching them, even as a young Peter Parker, is so fucking dumb. I just haymakered him in, and he fell down. I do not need to web him up before he gets up again. And just the whole introduction to the Shocker.
Yeah, I don't know how to tell you this, but I feel a lump.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm so sorry, man.
Is just so funny. I don't know, it's a good introduction to him and a good introduction to the web combat because you're just using your web slinger, but it just becomes such a nonsense part because there's no point to the whole web combat. You don't even use it during most boss fights because most boss fights don't even react to the web, so what is the point? After that fight with the Shocker, we end up back at Peter's house and go back to high school, which leads us to the first thing, or the first introduction to one of the world events. That introduction to the world event is races. Not like races as in race cars. At this point we meet Johnny Storm, and it's just something I want to talk about is this game has a lot of actual crossover characters. When I say crossover, I mean like Marvel characters that are supposed to be there. They're not like, there's not just an Avengers Tower, like an Amazing Spider-Man, and we're like, I wonder what Tony Stark's doing, and that's it. We're never gonna see them, you know, or like Marvel's Avengers, where it's just like we're trying to suck the MCU off. It's really nice to see like Johnny Storm show up and Wolverine show up, and not have to like have corporate jump through hoops for this. It's actually really nice. But this also leads to the next problem with the game, is that after this race, you realize that this is one of the only 2 world events, and the races start being fun at first, but once you get through like the 5th or 6th one, you realize that it's unlocking any more races with Johnny, which is cool, but not really what I wanted. And also, some of the races become so hard that you just have to be a speedrunner to beat some of these things. And it becomes so obviously just challenging to just want to even continue to do that. But the game also has a system where it wants you to do a certain amount of world events to do the other story events, which isn't bad. I think it's cool that they give you the list of what it is, but the map is so small and there's not so much going on that you get kind of bored trying to do that, or even try to go around looking for things to do. So you end up just kind of waiting for the random events going on, and just more world events, I guess. After this race with Johnny Storm and a couple of random thugs, we get to the next Venom part, and we're introduced to our Venom combat. We get to play as Venom, which is something that this game was super cool about, because back in the day, we all thought about it. We all wanted Venom to be playable, and we all wanted to be the big, massive destruction that he is. So this was a good introduction for it. Venom's combat. Venom is tracked by Toombs, who is the Vulture, as he's shown catching Eddie outside. Eddie's provoked, he ends up being Venom, and we start our level. And I just want to say that Venom's probably the most fun in this game. He's more fun than the web swinging sometimes, which is probably due to the fact he plays like a tank. He isn't moved by many attacks. He can't dodge, so you're not given the A button to dodge like with the Spider-Man. And if you do, you're just going to jump around like Spider-Man. He doesn't really have a web slinging. What he has instead is a leap and a web zip that uses his tentacle. So his movement isn't as fun. But what does make him fun is his actual combat comes off as actual like berserker mode rage. And it's really fun. It's fun to eat the enemies. At least for 30 minutes. See, the problem is once you get past the initial fun of being Venom, you end up just eating all the enemies anyway. And I don't mean that like in a horrible way. It just becomes more efficient to just eat everything as it comes along to you and throw a car or two than to interact with the actual combat. As Venom is parading around the city and is fighting, he throws a motorcycle through a bar, and guess who's there? It's Spike Spiegel as Wolverine. Yes, we get another Marvel character out of nowhere. It's Wolverine. Granted, it's Ultimate Wolverine, but it's still really cool. Venom and Wolverine fight, and I just wanted to say, I fucking cheesed this fight. I cheesed it by using the E button to stun Wolverine and then hit him with a couple of heart attacks. The Wolverine fight isn't terrible. I think it's also given the best chances to win because it's an arena and you're not having to chase him, which I'll get into in a minute with the other boss fights. The only thing I can really say that gets kind of annoying is he has like a grab attack that he can just go into once in a while, but the AI isn't smart enough to spam it, and it doesn't feel unfair at all to this boss fight. It's probably the least offensive boss fight in the game. It's decent. It actually is fun because you are not annoyed of the Venom combat just yet and having to just eat everybody. We go through a little bit more like city stuff with Peter, with another couple races, more stuff, more helping people. I will say that helping people in this is really interesting because instead of just having thugs attack people, the city people, you do have to like save people from hanging off of buildings and send them to the hospital or taking them to the hospital. It's actually really cool because it's a nice little gesture to show that like Spider-Man's a hero. And I think that's something that like sometimes these games fail to do, is show a hero being a hero. So it's really nice to actually have that something going on like that, even in these random things. But there's only 4 of them, and you'll notice them very, very soon. After doing all those side events, we end up fighting the Rhino with Spider-Man. And this is the first boss fight we have that's a chase, and it's not initially terrible. And I wonder if this was like the vertical slice they used to sell the game, because this is the actual part of the game that's fun. You go through chasing the Rhino, saving random people as you go along, and then fight the Rhino. It's really simple sounding, but it's the most fun in the game because the chase isn't dictated by like you having close to be with the Rhino. If you wait too long, obviously you lose, but they give you some time to save the citizens, do stuff like that. It isn't like to the point where like the Rhino's attacking you while you're saving these citizens. It's not anything like that. It becomes really fun because you feel like Spider-Man for a moment. Even in that boss fight, which has some annoying movements, it's not super terrible. But at the end of that boss fight, Peter learns the name of a company, which is supposed to tie into like the twist, but because nothing's really said dialogue-wise, I don't think anyone really caught on to that twist. Even me as an adult watching this, I was wondering what the fuck that meant. I was like, is that Stark Industries? And it's like, no, that's not Stark Industries. That's supposed to be the twist in the story. You're supposed to go, oh, that's that guy. Trask. It's Trask Industries. Thanks, game. After beating Rhino, we're given a couple more world events to do, and then we're back into it with Eddie, and we learn a little more about his combat mechanics. And this is right when I got annoyed and started just eating everybody. His grab attack is really fun because you can throw people, and you can slam them to the ground, you can break their back, you can throw the car, but a lot of the time that you do those things, it's too much of an animation, you're just taking too much damage. This is compounded on the fact that Venom does damage to himself over time because he's eating Eddie Brock, I guess. God, that is such a stupid mechanic. Why the fuck would you do that? Whatever. Eddie beats Trask Industries, and we end up back with Spider-Man in the overworld. And then we're introduced to the second world event. A world event that almost feels like the devs are saying sorry for there's no other content in this world. Here's some combat. Gauntlets. Gauntlets are the second world event you're going to be playing with a lot. Gauntlets are what I would say are what the developer being sorry that they couldn't do more with the world, so here's some combat arenas. And they're okay. I wonder if the punks they chose for like the English gang are based off of Brian Michael Bendis, or is that just me being like that because they're all bald? I don't know. These combat gauntlets are fun-ish, but the problem is that there's not enough enemy variety for Spider-Man to really make use of them. There's gun guy, melee guy, and that's it. And I can hear you go, well, that's all that needs to be. It's like, kinda, I guess, but the thing is that even Old Amazing Spider-Man kind of introduces other enemies as you go along. Like, you know, sword guys, and energy mix, Mr. Negative Energy guys. And I'm only comparing it to that game because it's someone that's more recent in my memory for a Spider-Man game. I never really got to play Spider-Man 2. Anyway, the gauntlets are just unfun and become just a chore to do. As you do your gauntlet and go through it, we're given the first boss fight between Venom and Spider-Man. And it's really annoying because there's a mechanic that's supposed to be some sort of plot device where Spider-Man's spider senses just go crazy around Venom. It's explained later as a twist, and it's really dumb, but it's just really not a fun fight because Venom eats you. There's like some things you do. You can kind of cheese it by jumping around and hitting him from air combos, but it's just not a fun fight. Venom's then captured by Saber and S.H.I.E.L.D., and Spider-Man's rightfully pissed. And right here, I just gotta say that the story for Venom, or story for S.H.I.E.L.D. in this case, for the Ultimates, is just so weak. S.H.I.E.L.D. just comes off as like dicks who just are just incompetent. And I'm sure that was probably the point in the Ultimates comics because this is post 9/11, but it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right that half of the time Nick Fury is just like being a dick, you know? We're given a couple more world events things to do, and then we're given our next mission, which is the Electro fight between Eddie. Eddie is given some instructions by Trask Industries to do a fight with Electro to test the suit's abilities. And this brings us to the first annoying boss fight. And there's something I just didn't mention, is that a lot of bosses and a lot of bigger enemies have physics-based attacks, meaning that like they'll ragdoll your ass like Gary's Mod across the map anytime they do these attacks. Venom's chase with Electro has Electro doing this ball attack randomly where he throws you across the map. This is also made more frustrating by the fact that the coding in the chase is if you're a couple meters off, if you're like just a little bit behind where you're supposed to be, you'll lose the chase. So you can imagine how frustrating it was to fucking beat the fucking chase for me. I think I failed like 34 times, and then that's not even counting the fight itself with Electro, which was just difficult in general because he has a second form that's just impossibly intensely difficult for no reason. And it leads me to wonder, like, did the devs just make some of these boss fights hard for padding? Is this a padded game? Probably. I'm thinking this to myself as probably. The answer is more like yes. But as we go along fighting Electro and going along, Spider-Man comes in and brings in this annoying fucking second mechanic that they do during boss fights. This game is already showing all its bad hands right now. It's introducing you to all the mechanics I want you to think about. The boss fight has Electro attacking Spider-Man, so now you have to protect Spider-Man as you attack Electro, as you destroy signs, because Electro is now super powerful and taking electricity from the signs, and now you're also having to deal with your own health because your health goes down slightly little by little, and also you're taking heavy damage because Electro's attacks just fucking zone on you. Like he's goddamn Peacock and Skullgirl. It's like, I don't understand. I beat the boss fight, crashes, and I get really mad. I come back to it, obviously, beat him again, and we get to the next point of the story, which is Spider-Man is talked to by Nick Fury. And at this point, Nick Fury's just being a dick. He's just like, yeah, Peter, don't be Peter, you know, we'll get him. We've been failing to get him this whole time, but we'll get him. We'll get him. We'll definitely get him. And this leads us to this next point where Peter is chasing Firefly. And it's just another unfun point because Firefly is just so fucking not fun to, like, just chase at all. We get to see Black Widow, by the way, in the previous cutscene, and it's just... Black Widow is such a weird character because she just has different characterizations, and this is just so flat that I can't even make it a judgment, so I'll just leave it there. But Nick Fury being like, y'all know do the opposite of what I say, so fucking stupid, is not even worth anything, but just... They might as well just made it a fucking text prompt on, like, pushing X somewhere. Anyway, Peter goes to the shield thing, finds Firefly, and chases him. We're giving the second most fucking frustrating chase sequence this one. Why? Because Firefly has walls. For whatever fucking reason, I don't know what the devs thought. I don't know if this was just to make it longer so that, like, this fight was really hard and you had to do it, like, 5 times. But he puts up walls. Just straight up energy walls. And you have to fucking figure out how to climb around and get around it. You'd say, oh, but the movement's fun to you. Wouldn't that be fun? Yes, if they didn't come up to me in my fucking face like a goddamn Looney Tunes character. If there was some sort of warning. See, a lot of these modern devs would probably put like a little light flashing to before you do that. No, this game doesn't do that. It just puts it in your goddamn face, and you're now having to figure out and play, instead of playing with your skill, you're playing by memory, and that's no fun anymore. We chase him around until we have a final boss fight, and it's just, at this point, I stopped caring about the combat situations and everything, and I just started fucking pacing my way through. I think I downloaded a 100% save file just to make sure that, like, I didn't have to replay some of these issues because I was crashing so much at this point and having so many issues with my recording device. After the Firefly fight, we're given to the next fight with Venom, which is Venom versus S.H.I.E.L.D. Venom fights Saber, which is not really an annoying fight. The annoying part comes when you are being chased by S.H.I.E.L.D. and there's like 7 helicopters. And this is where my second part of the issue comes in. I fucking hate the lock-on system. The lock-on system doesn't work for combat at all. It just does not. It does what it wants. I can only assume that, like, the AI controlling it just hates all humanity because it just does not lock on to anything for me. I locked on to the enemies, it wouldn't web up. I would lock on to things like the helicopter to throw cars at, it would just mess up. The lock-on is just so bad, and I wonder if it took the short bus home. After having this fight with Saber and Venom getting away, and this is where I have to go, I get it's Saber, and she kind of is incompetent, but why is S.H.I.E.L.D. so incompetent that they keep getting, like, I get that's the plot driving plot, but at this point, what the fuck? Now we're just making S.H.I.E.L.D. look more incompetent. After that one, we're given the next part of the mission, which is Spider-Man is fighting Green Goblin. And oh my god, is this fight just so frustrating. So, at first, it's not that frustrating chasing him that much. He attacks you when you're rescuing citizens, and I had a point where that crashed too during that. But after getting past that point, that's not even the frustrating part. The frustrating part is the actual fight, because his fireballs zone on you. Like, I swear to God, I don't know if this was intentional by the devs, but some of these fireballs just feel like they lock in too much. And this is also made worse by the fact that, like, you can't attack him, it's timed, you have to wait. So now the boss fight's just not even skill-based, it's waiting until you can hit him. It becomes no fun, really, at that point. We beat Green Goblin, Peter's pissed at Nick Fury, all's well that ends well, I guess. And as we continue on, we get Peter captured by Saber. And oh my god, is this another really terrible boss fight? And so at one point, I realized, oh, we're there. We're at the stretch of the game. I don't remember this boss fight as a kid. And I see why now. This boss fight, I didn't fail it that many times. But it's so frustrating, so fucking stupid. This bitch has tranquilizer darts that do damage over time, as well as having enemies spawn around you. That'd be okay if Peter could actually fucking dodge, but to make it even worse, they take away your web slingers. So you're having to dodge and roll around, and you're given half your movement options as you're trying to fucking not die against this bitch. I died like a couple of times, but it was just so frustrating having just all those things. I wonder if like half the development team just didn't play this part of the level. After Saber, we chase Venom with Saber to go save her. We're given that second annoying make sure the objective is safe while we fight the boss fight. And it's just not fun. Venom is just aggressive as fuck, and I swear to god his animations are just faster when the AI is playing him. You can go, well, that's because he's supposed to be like that, Soren. No, this is beyond that. This is like, I swear to god, the tentacles should not be going that fast. Like a Japanese girl in a hentai, that's making me very uncomfortable. After we beat Venom, we're all brought to Trask Industries, and Peter is turned into Carnage because the Venom cells that are still in Peter's body are trying to get to Venom, and they activate him. So now you're fighting Carnage as Venom. This boss fight is kind of annoying, but it's not as bad as like the last couple. Mostly because his attacks are a lot more pronounced. You can tell what he's about to do. And also you can feed spam him pretty fucking easily. It's probably one of the few boss fights that you can use that feed stun as much as you possibly can. Once you get past that part, you're given to the last fight. And this is about the point in the game where I was about to give up. The Venom boss fight at the end of the game isn't hard like difficulty like Millennia or something like that. It just compounds all of the problems I've been talking about this whole time into one boss fight. Venom's animations are fast. He's given these new like 3 attack animations with his tentacles that all can send you flying like a Gary's Mod ragdoll. Not only on that, he's also got a grab attack, so once you do get in there, he will just throw you. It doesn't do damage, but that's not even the worst part. The worst part is that you have an objective, the helicopter that the CEO of the company that killed your father is in. You have to make sure Venom doesn't knock that over. But see, he's an idiot and he turned on the helicopter and he doesn't know how to fly it. So now the blades are going above you. So what does that mean? It means you can't dodge whenever you're attacking Venom next to the helicopter. You have to walk away from Venom to dodge his 2 attacks and then wait for him to come get aggressive. It gets fucking worse because the fire on the level spreads, and now you can't even go out and start doing that. You have to dodge on the fucking helicopter pad. I, at this point, was screaming. I had gotten so mad. I had done this like fucking at least 50 tries. 50 tries of just trying to beat Venom. And when I finally did it, it crashed on me during the cutscene. And at that point I was done. I was done with this game. I was done with everything. I got so mad I threw up. I had never been that mad in my life. But at this point I was so fucking frustrated. I had a physical reaction to just being mad. And it didn't even give me any answers. The worst part is the story is just bland, and you can tell this whole game is unfinished because after that, they leave it open for a sequel, and you're given Venom Rampage mode as an unlockable. Well, thanks, Tyark. The whole thing, and the reason I have to say is that some of the reasons why this game feels unfinished is a lot of plot points. When you're chasing Firefly, he's given a Sandman sample, and it makes no sense because Sandman's never shown again. You're given points and points again where they seem like they're gonna come up with more things, like more Wolverine fights or more stuff with Johnny Storm, but it never really leads anywhere, like the races themselves. So where does that leave us with this game? Well, it leaves us with a comic book that follows it that has really a lot of inconsistencies because the writers didn't care, and it leaves us with a broken game that I can't really recommend. I mean, it's free and you can go get it, but I can't really recommend it at all. It's broken, it barely works, it's not really fun. This web singing's fun and the visuals make you really feel like you're in the comic book, but there's so many better options out there now with superhero games and just Spider-Man in general that I can't even see anyone really clamoring to come pick this up unless you're a fucking masochist. And that leaves me really empty inside, realizing that maybe Kid Me was just an idiot, but hey, we have to come back at some point. This is Soren Thorin. I thank you for watching. This was just really frustrating, and I've had like a couple of like mishaps with losing footage, so this is really last minute. Thank you again for watching. Anyway, peace out, and I hope you're having a great day today.